The invitation was delivered with the smarmy slickness only Alistair Finch could muster. He leaned against the polished mahogany of the reception desk, the scent of his overpriced cologne preceding him like an obnoxious herald. "Zara," he began, not quite making eye contact, his gaze fixed on a point somewhere over her shoulder. "Big day today. The quarterly board meeting. The titans of industry are gathering." He chuckled, a dry, rustling sound. "How about you join us? You can bring your little notepad. See how the big boys work. Might be educational for you." The two junior executives flanking him snickered on cue. It was a joke. A cruel, condescending joke meant to highlight her station, to paint her as the insignificant speck at the bottom of his corporate food chain. He wanted a prop, a silent, smiling black girl in the corner to fetch coffee and serve as a visual punchline for his power. Zara offered him a small, placid smile. The kind she had perfected over the past 12 months. A smile that revealed nothing and conceded everything. "Of course, Mr. Finch. What time should I be there?" His smirk widened. He had his prop. 2 o'clock sharp. Don't be late. As he and his sycophants swaggered away toward the executive elevators, Zara's smile didn't falter. She looked at the clock on her computer screen. It was 1:30 p.m. 30 minutes. 30 minutes until a year of silent observation would finally come to an end. Mr. Finch wanted her to take notes. Oh, she had notes. A year's worth of them. This company, Finch and Sterling Investments, hadn't always been this way. Before the soulless name change, it was simply Sterling Investments, founded by one man, her father, David Sterling. He was a titan, but a quiet one. A man who believed a company's foundation wasn't its stock price, but its people, from the janitor to the CEO. He knew every employee by name. He'd built this empire from a small office with 2 phones and an unshakable belief in ethical growth. When he passed away 2 years ago, the grief was a tidal wave. Buried within his will was a complex and brilliant final lesson for his only daughter. He had left her his entire 51% controlling stake in the company, but it was held in a blind trust. The trust had one condition: for 1 year, upon turning 25, she had to work within the company in an entry-level position, anonymously. "You can't lead a ship if you don't know how the engine room works, Z," his voice echoed in her memory, as clear as if he were standing beside her. "Don't watch them from the throne. Watch them from the floor. You'll see who people truly are when they think no one important is watching." So, she had become Zara Davis, the overqualified receptionist with a quiet demeanor and an impeccable work ethic. And from her vantage point at the front desk, the nexus of all company communication, she had seen everything. She saw Alistair Finch, the man her father's board had appointed in the wake of his death, a man chosen for his polished resume and ruthless reputation. She saw him gut the employee wellness programs her father had championed. She saw him lay off loyal, long-term staff to pad quarterly profits and boost his own bonus. She overheard his sneering phone calls, his dismissive remarks about clients, his blatant disregard for the company's founding principles. He was a vulture in a Seville row suit, picking apart the legacy of a lion. Her father had been right. From the floor, you saw the truth. You saw the fear in the eyes of middle managers, the frustration of the analysts forced to push risky, unethical investment packages, and the utter contempt the CEO had for the very people who made his success possible. At 1:55 p.m., Zara locked her computer. She smoothed down her simple black dress, the one she wore as a uniform. She picked up a leather-bound notebook and a pen, the same brand her father used to use. Then, she sent a single, pre-written text message to a number saved as Mr. Graves. "It's time." The reply was instantaneous. "I am on standby. The documents are ready to be presented. Go give 'em hell, Miss Sterling." Zara took a deep breath and walked not to the coffee machine, but to the executive boardroom on the 40th floor. When she arrived, the door was slightly ajar. She could hear the low murmur of voices and Alistair's booming laugh. She pushed the door open. Every head turned. The room was a caricature of corporate power, a long, imposing table of dark wood, surrounded by 12 stern-faced, gray-haired men in identical dark suits. They looked at her with expressions ranging from confusion to annoyance. Alistair, seated at the head of the table, clapped his hands together with theatrical glee. "Ah, here she is. Our guest of honor. Zara, everyone. She's here to take some notes for us. Find a chair in the corner, love. Try to keep up." A few of the board members chuckled. One of them, an older man named Mr. Harrison who had been friends with her father, looked at her with a flicker of something, pity, perhaps. Zara ignored the corner. With calm, deliberate steps, she walked along the side of the table. The snickering died down, replaced by a confused silence as she passed the empty chairs. She walked until she reached the other end of the table, directly opposite Alistair Finch. There was one empty chair there, reserved for a visiting partner who had cancelled. She pulled it out and sat down. The silence was now thick and heavy. Alistair's face, which had been a mask of smug amusement, began to twitch. Zara, I think you're confused, he said, his voice tight. Your seat is in the corner. I don't believe it is, Mr. Finch, she replied, her voice even and clear. It was the first time she had spoken to him without the deferential softness he expected. The sound of her own confident voice in that room was like a key turning in a lock. She placed her notebook on the table. I'm afraid I won't be taking notes on your proceedings today, she continued, her eyes sweeping across the stunned faces of the board. Instead, I will be setting the agenda. Alistair let out a short, incredulous laugh. Is this a prank? What is going on? Security. That won't be necessary. Zara's gaze locked onto his. The predator-prey dynamic he had so enjoyed was reversing in real time, and the panic was beginning to dawn in his eyes. The first item on the agenda is a review of leadership. Specifically, your leadership, Alistair. You have no right. Actually, I do. She gestured to the large monitor on the wall behind him. If you'll direct your attention to the screen. She pressed a small button on a remote she'd brought with her. The screen flickered to life, showing the face of a man in his late 60s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense expression. It was Arthur Graves, her father's lawyer and the executor of his estate. Mr. Graves, one of the board members gasped. What is the meaning of this? Good afternoon, gentlemen, Arthur said, his voice booming through the speakers. I am here today at the request of the majority shareholder of Finch and Sterling Investments. Alistair scoffed, color returning to his face. He thought he had found his footing. The majority shareholder is a blind trust. It has no active role in governance. I am the CEO. I run this company. That is correct, Mr. Finch. The controlling interest was held in the Sterling Trust, Arthur said calmly. However, the sole beneficiary of that trust, Miss Zara Sterling, reached the age of 25 1 year ago, at which point the conditions of the trust were met. As of this morning, the holding company that contains 51% of this firm's voting shares was transferred directly into her name. He shared his screen. A legal document appeared, crisp and undeniable. Share certificates, transfer agreements, and a final, damning page showing the ownership structure. At the top, listed as principal and owner, Zara Sterling. The silence in the room was absolute. It was as if the air had been sucked out of it. Jaws were literally agape. The men who, moments ago, were laughing at her, now looked at her as if she were a ghost. Alistair Finch's face had turned a ghastly shade of white. He looked from the screen to Zara, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Sterling? You're David's daughter? I am, Zara said, her voice cutting through the stillness. And for the last year, from the front desk, I have had a unique view of the company my father poured his soul into building. She opened her notebook. This was not for taking notes, this was her evidence. On March 12, she began, her voice ringing with authority, you, Mr. Finch, ordered the analytics department to falsify performance data on the Henderson account to secure a higher commission, exposing this firm to massive legal risk. On May 3, you terminated the entire janitorial staff, all of whom had been with this company for over a decade, and replaced them with a non-union third-party service for a saving so negligible it didn't even cover the severance packages. You did it, I overheard you say, to clear out the old wood. She went on, page after page, date after date. She detailed every unethical decision, every cruel act, every instance of mismanagement. She spoke of the low morale she witnessed, the good people who had quit, the toxic culture of fear he had cultivated. She wasn't angry. She was precise. It was a clinical, devastating takedown. My father believed that this company's worth was measured by its integrity, she said, closing the notebook. Under your leadership, Mr. Finch, this company has become morally bankrupt. And as I've seen from the quarterly reports you tried to bury, it is rapidly heading towards financial bankruptcy as well. She looked around the table, meeting the eyes of each board member. My father built this company to last for generations. You were entrusted with his legacy, and you treated it like your personal piggy bank. Finally, she turned her gaze back to the pale, trembling man at the other end of the table. As the majority shareholder, I am exercising my right to call an immediate vote of no confidence in the current CEO, Alistair Finch. Mr. Harrison, her father's old friend, was the first to speak, his voice thick with emotion. I vote yes. One by one, the others followed. The sycophants who had laughed at Alistair's joke were now desperate to distance themselves from him. Yes. Yes. I. The verdict was unanimous. Alistair slumped in his chair, defeated. You can't do this, he whispered. It's already done, Zara said coolly. She looked towards the door. Security? 2 guards, who had been waiting outside at her instruction, entered the room. They walked up behind Alistair's chair. He looked at Zara one last time, his eyes filled with a mixture of hatred and disbelief. He had invited the receptionist to the meeting as a joke, and she had just taken his entire world away from him. As they escorted him out, Zara stood up and addressed the remaining board members. Gentlemen. As of this moment, I am assuming the role of interim CEO. Our work begins now. The first order of business is to reinstate every single employee who was unjustly terminated by Mr. Finch. The second is to schedule a company-wide meeting for tomorrow morning. I believe it's time I properly introduce myself to my employees. Later that evening, Zara stood alone in the CEO's office. It was vast and impersonal, a monument to Alistair's ego. On the massive desk sat a framed photo of Alistair with a smug grin, shaking hands with some politician. Zara picked it up, dropped it into the trash can, and replaced it with a small, worn photo of her and her father, standing outside the company's first small office 20 years ago. She looked out the floor-to-ceiling window at the sprawling city lights below. Her father had given her more than just a company. He had given her a mission. She had seen the rot from the floor. Now, it was time to heal the company from the head of the table. Her journey was just beginning. Zara's story is a powerful testament to the idea that true worth and power are not defined by a job title or the opinions of others. It's about integrity, legacy, and the quiet strength it takes to reclaim what is rightfully yours. If her journey from the reception desk to the CEO's chair inspired you, and if you believe in stories where justice is served, then please show your support. Hit that like button to let us know you enjoyed it, and be sure to subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories that challenge our perceptions and celebrate the underdog. Your support helps us continue to create content that matters. Thank you for watching.